Hello everyone, my name is Cassandra and I am a Deathkeeper. Today is a bit different. I need to make a personal ask and tell a bit of a story for myself today. On October 3rd of last year, I was at the ICE facility protesting here in Portland, and I was assaulted by ICE. They dogpiled me with about 10 different people and spent about 6 minutes beating up on me on the street corner in front of television cameras and people's personal cameras. And I have been trying to recoup losses and go through legal to see that brought to justice. It's been very hard, and I've not actually been able to talk about it, and probably still can't really talk about it, and I really can't say more than that. But what I would like to take a moment to ask of everybody today that can see this is, if you were there that day and have video footage or are willing to come forward and speak with my attorney about statements and evidence, things like that, please get in contact with me as soon as you can. It's been a struggle. It's been a book of my life I've not been able to close, and the story itself is far more ridiculous than what I can give out right now. And I will tell that story one day, because it deserves to be said, and it deserves to be understood for what it was. I want to be clear about something too. I didn't do or set myself up in any way that this was intentional. I was executing my First Amendment rights to protest, my freedom of speech, and they didn't like it. And that's why I was attacked. I think I can say at least that much, because there were no court charges or proceedings after my assault. They didn't get what they wanted, which was a protective order, and they dropped their cases against me. But that in itself is its own indictment to how absolutely unforgivable and atrocious all of that was. And so, as I said, if you're somebody who was there on October 3rd down at Macadam's ICE facility here in Portland, Oregon, please reach out to me. I know that there were enough news stories at that time that I don't think that there's much argument or disagreement about what happened that day. But it still is not enough to tell the real story, and how it impacted all of you as well as how it impacted me. So please reach out. Something that I'm very oft to say around here is, give what you can, and sharing is free. I believe that 100% because I myself am somebody who's never been able to give much, but I've always, or at least tried to, be the voice that shared and got people connected to the resources that they needed. And now I'm in a position where I need that help. I am disabled. I've been disabled for a very long time. And it was my disabilities that made the attack on me so much more severe. It was also discrimination as a trans person, as a larger person, as somebody that they saw as a man. And I'm not even misrepresenting at that point, because that is how they reacted to me. And that is also what the news had to say about me at that time as well. I have not heard one single accurate story about my assault. Nobody talked about it. And the terrifying thing is that the things that happened to me on October 3rd of last year are the exact same things that ended up happening to Renee Good and Alex Preddy when ICE decided they would go trophy hunting. And I know that is a subject that has not been talked about nearly enough. Even more so, I know that there's people out there that outright don't believe that is what the bigoted, homophobic, racist assholes at ICE have been doing. You can see it in my footage. You can hear it in the testimonies about the death of Alex Preddy. You can hear it in the language of the ICE officers who shot Renee Good. And it happened to me first. It happened to me before either of them. And if we were just one quirk or circumstance around the situation, just one little thing was different, it could have been them who survived and me who didn't. That's real. And I've been living with that for over a year now. And I was living with that when I was out there protesting, which I don't do very much anymore because, quite frankly, it's not been working. It's not been much of anything except for an occasional party that they have to deal with. It's an annoyance to them, and it doesn't stop them from abducting our people. And to make matters worse, the people that were down there last year, when I went back for our year anniversary, I guess, and people had to remind me that it had been a year, there weren't very many of us familiar anymore. There were still a few. There were still very hard working people that were still down there, and I made my presence as well in solidarity for them. I've done this every single step of the way for the people that are actually being targeted and ruined by all of this. And that's something else I want to be very clear about here, is I'm not trying to take center stage and drive the story. This was just something that happened, and I happen to be the person it happened to. And this is not anything more than just trying to do my part. And to give you an idea of just how mortifying that this is at times, my case now is basically restitutions and tort. It's to be made whole from the damage that was done to me. And I was kind of left to think of a question at one point was, if you could be paid to go through that again, what would your dollar amount be? And the truth is that for me, there is no dollar amount that would be enough for what they did on October 3rd down at Macadam. I was already disabled. They shortened my life. They humiliated me. They dehumanized me. They destroyed property. They ruined everything that I had. Bathed me in chemicals strong enough that not even they could stand it, nor could the ER staff when I was brought in that night. They abused me thoroughly. And the news decided to co-sign with them and not do their part either, and instead talk about the disgruntled man who was completely erratic and crazy and homeless. And I wasn't at that time. I wasn't any of those things. But that was how quickly the story got written, and that was how quickly the story got buried. And many of you don't know that story. And there's good parts that came out of that too. That was the same night that Toad became the face of the resistance, the amphibian revolution and all of that. And I know how it started because I was the start of it. When I was being transported out in an ambulance, I could feel how angry people were about what they saw happen to me. And they let us know. And that night, there was a lot that happened that people outside of that particular protest circle don't know anything about, the good and the bad. And so now, almost a year later, and having faced technical issues and the problems that my own autism and other things create for me in my life, the loss of time, not knowing what day of the week it is sometimes, or not even having the energy to make a video like this. There are so many things that are not quantifiable here. And my response originally, my response this most of this time when it came to talking about money, which I don't deal with, that shit grosses me out, quite frankly. But when I had to think of a number and actually put, tax to the experience that I had and the losses that I've suffered, the budget of DHS was the number I settled on, is the number I'm settled on. Because that department shouldn't exist. It was a terrible idea post 9/11. It has not served in the capacity that it was organized for, and it has a dozen more fucking offices that are just as disconnected, just as dysfunctional, and just as ineffective. And they should be gone. They should have been gone in 2004, 2001 maybe. Again, numbers, time, all that stuff is very lost on me. That is an acceptable amount because I can do more with what they have for a lot less and hurt a lot less people in the process and still do the job that office was built for. They can't. And they shouldn't have it. And I can tell you right now that if I were landed some kind of windfall like that, I'd be putting it back into my community and making sure that this shit never happens to anybody ever again. And not just this. Housing, food resources, employment opportunities, whatever the hell it took. A much better usage of our tax dollars than beating up on somebody who was never a threat in the first place, but gets the monster label on appearance alone all the time. Because that's been my life. So, here we are, stuck running in circles with the government and my life just falling through an hourglass that nobody can see. And that's wrong. And so I decided I'd come on today and hopefully correct that and let y'all know a little bit of what happens in the places that you can't see. What happened to me. And eventually what ended up happening to Alex and Renee Good right afterwards. And probably Keith Porter too. I unfortunately am not so certain on his departure date. There's a lot that I have to write down to keep track of some of this stuff. And I do it alone. And in a system that we have right now, it's designed to let people exactly like me slip through the cracks. And if I don't fight for everything I have, there's still no guarantee that I'm going to be safe from that. This is my life and I have to live it every single day. Working 5 times harder for a fraction of a gain, if any gain at all. That's why y'all haven't heard about me. And it's why my story and my assault from ICE didn't get told. Along with all of the other red tape, like you're not supposed to talk when you have a case because that could damage the case. Unfortunately, I'm not telling you anything that hasn't been vetted 1,000 different ways by just myself. that I've taken far too long to say what should have been said from the very get-go. And so I'm asking for y'all now, because I am at a point in my life where this is about all I can do. October 3rd was real. It wasn't a joke. I wasn't a homeless man who happened to cross Macadam that day. I've been there for a long time. I was. And the only reason I'm not there now is because I've been in more pain than I can really relate. And I've had to keep going with next to no resources and no wholeness. So, if you're able to give to this effort, which is not, I'm not here, look, let me put it to you this way. I can do a lot more with a person and their abilities, what their talents are, what their crafts give them skills for. I can do a lot more with that than I can do with a blank check. Just outright. I don't need people's money. I need people's time and their skills and their compassion and their ability to investigate and understand. And that is arguably harder to get than if I were to just try and run a GoFundMe under false pretenses, no less. It amazes me how much people give to others' vacations across countries or going to school or any other number of things. But justice is something that falls by the wayside because of fears of a grift or anything of that sort. I even now I feel in the back of my mind the hesitance to respond, to even acknowledge anything I'm saying right now. And that's wrong. That's an impulse that we have to get over. As I said, give what you can. Sharing is free. That's the easiest thing that anybody can do. So if you made it this far, I hope that you're in a position that you can help. Either you know somebody who has footage of that day that was there, you are somebody who was there. And I know for many of the people I've spoken with before, fear of retaliation is very real. And I want you to know that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure the courts don't expose people needlessly. I was fortunate enough that my incident is on full display to the world, that the news was there to capture it. But people need to speak up too. And honestly, the people I've spoken to who are afraid to come forward, that's reasonable and fair. It's not a reason to stay silent, though, and it's not a reason to back down. Because if it happens to you, you're gonna want the same thing. You're gonna need people who are looking out for you and stepping forward. And I've been a person who's done that historically. I've typically been the person to move forward, step forward and change things, even if it put me at a disadvantage. But know that I have no intention of making anybody else's situation worse for doing the right thing. That is a psychological loop that needs to be closed, where we reward people for mediocrity and doing mundane or whatever things, and then we punish people who have wrongs done to them. We question them, we question survivors, and we constantly think the worst of them. And for those that are looking for a little bit of proof, well, my life is that proof. You can follow along to see how this continues. Whenever I do finally make DHS pay for what they did, you can see how that's going to change my life too. And how it'll go into the next thing, or it'll go into the continuing efforts against DHS, or it'll go into housing for homeless people, advocacy, outreach. That's what I started with. Just being somebody who's been through enough stuff that I can help people who are going through it themselves. And that's been fine. But this whole saga, the last 10 years, that's never been okay. And we gotta do more. And we gotta fight harder. And nobody is gonna do it by themselves. So, again, give what you can. Sharing is free. No more, no less. I put tabs on my stuff too. That way people know exactly what their dollars get spent on. But I'm not asking for dollars. I'm asking for video footage. I'm asking for the coverage I didn't get on October 3rd. I'm asking for y'all to listen and to help me fight our common adversary. The ones who call us enemy for no reason except the fact that we exist and live our lives in a way that they don't agree with. That's all this is about. It's a temper tantrum by people who can't accept others' differences. And it should be so much easier for us to rally around that. Spells and blessings, everybody. Stay safe out there. It's another component that the Gravekeeper knows about these kinds of movements and resistances. And it's why whether it's y'all on the other side of this rectangle or if it's people in the streets of Portland, I tell them to stay safe, because something the Gravekeeper knows, the Deathkeeper knows about this, is that when people start dying needlessly like this, when they get gunned down by Renee Good, or like Renee Good did, and like what happened to Alex Preddy and Keith Porter, and so many more, the names and lists continue to rise. What a lot of people don't understand about that is, yes, it is a terrible thing that should be acted against, but you're also losing the chance for those people who are no longer with us to continue fighting by our side as well. It's a thinning of the ranks. Any death, any loss, any assault is too much in our struggle for freedom, sovereignty, and independence. And we should act like it. We should stop expecting somebody else to come in from the back line and fill in the ranks of the vanguard. Because there's not enough of us for that. And there's not enough of us still able to keep fighting. At least to those levels, to be out there every day. More and more of us started dropping off. And I can even pinpoint here in Portland the moment that kind of kick-started that. And I can also tell you stories about what happened to organizations after they abandoned the efforts, when they started looking out for themselves instead of working with each other. I know a lot of groups that never made it to term. My own included, honestly. We didn't make it either. I'm still here, but I'm not able to do what I used to do. I can't open my doors to the people that need it the way I used to. And that level of desperation that we find in our world, where people start doing that and acting like that, when people start cannibalizing each other and start believing in LGB without T, that's pretty much the end of the resistance at that point. And that's moving on to something much, much uglier. That turns into tribalism. And I've seen it here. It's why I had to take a step back and reevaluate and focus on my own damn life for a little bit. Especially after what happened on October 3rd. And especially since it's not being resolved quite like you might expect, like many other people's situations have been resolved as I've been understanding it. I know it's a long process and I'm going through the motions. There's still more that can be done. So, stay safe out there. Spells and blessings to everyone. And if you're somebody who saw me get violated by ICE on October 3rd of last year, 2025, please step forward. Everything begins with a conversation. Thank you for your time.